Casey Thompson, coming from Texas. He had hit the transfer portal a few weeks ago, now makes his decision to come to Nebraska. So, Zach, how's that strike you?
I mean, it's a good sign. I think all Husker fans should be pretty thrilled about having a guy, like you mentioned, he's a guy that he led the Big 12 in TD passes. He's extremely talented, probably one of the more talented quarterbacks in the country. I mean, there's obviously sometimes he has some decision-making errors, so there's going to be some flaws in a guy in the transfer portal. But at the same time, yeah, you're getting a guy who's uber athletic, one of the stronger arms in college football. It just comes down to decision making and reads, and I think that's something you get in the right system. That's where you can flourish, and hopefully limit some of those mistakes and make yourself a really good college quarterback.
So I had heard a lot about Casey Thompson when he was recruited and then signed at Texas, that he was a top flight. I haven't looked up the recruiting rankings recently, but he was a top 5 quarterback in the country, something in that range. And the first time I saw him play was at the end of the 2020 season. Sam Ehlinger left the Alamo Bowl against Colorado, and Casey Thompson stepped in, and I was like super impressed. Like, he was navigating the pocket and throwing from different arm angles and throwing not the type passes that you see the typical college quarterback throw in terms of tight windows, anticipating receivers, and I didn't want to go too crazy over it. It was Colorado, but just forget the opponent, just in terms of anticipating throws and throwing NFL type passes into tight windows. And, when you get that shot from behind the quarterback that they show from up above, and you can get a feel for where was the defender and where was the receiver when the quarterback's just making his decision. And sometimes it's like crazy. You're thinking, how in the world did they figure out that the linebacker was going to clear and that was going to happen and this was going to happen? And he was making those kind of throws. And again, I didn't want to go crazy because it was like 10 passes. He tore them up like 8 for 10, but he threw 6 touchdown passes that year with no picks. And then he comes back this season and actually lost the job out of the gate to Hudson Card, another stud recruit. And so they battled it out down to the end, and Steve Sarkisian went with Card. And then he didn't play well. Couple games into it, Casey Thompson takes it back over. And as you mentioned, he then throws 24 touchdown passes and leads the Big 12.
Yeah, I think when I was reading about the Card thing, I think they really went to Card for strictly decision making. Having a guy like Bijan Robinson in the backfield, they went to a guy who would make less mistakes, and they thought Card would do that. But then there wasn't enough risk, and there wasn't enough of the athleticism that fit that offense. And you saw the offense kind of take the next step once they went back to Thompson after there's a little bit of an injury and Card struggled. But, you turn on games like the KU game and Oklahoma game, and you see those ridiculous stats he had. But the game that, kind of caught my eye from this year when I went back and I was watching some of the games was the Baylor-Texas game. We all know Baylor, top 10 defense in the country, really good at what they do. I think he threw for about 270 and 2 touchdowns in that game. He looked really good. Like you mentioned, the anticipation is kind of that thing that separates a college quarterback from a future NFL quarterback. He has that. He makes some mistakes, but he's pretty confident in what he's doing, and I think that's something that, Nebraska fans will take at this point. Something with Martinez you didn't have all the time. It seemed like he was a little bit hesitant to make some of those throws and anticipate some of those tight throwing windows. And I think you're going to have that. I think you have a guy that doesn't lack any confidence in Casey Thompson. And the athleticism is going to be there too. 6'1", 190. He's a little bit smaller in terms of weight, which I think is going to help him. And why you see that quickness and that ability to maneuver in the pocket, that's really something that makes him stand out.